Douglas, welcome back to Secure Freedom Radio. Great to have you with us. I'm sorry it's on this particular occasion with the horror that was afflicted upon the people of Norway, but tell us what you make of this episode and where you think it's likely to lead.
Well, thank you, Frank. Very good to be with you, as always. I mean, the first thing is, of course, is that everyone, I think, a lot of people, at any rate, commentators and analysts around the world, when the first tragic news from Oslo, this news of a car bombing, was the first thing, of course, that anyone knew on Friday afternoon around 3:30. When that first became publicly knowledge, of course, a lot of people leapt up and assumed this was an Islamist car bomb, some kind of, Islamist attack. A lot of people immediately started, to reel off the numerous threats that have happened over the years against Norway from Al-Qaeda and their affiliated groups. But then the picture started to get even more confusing as these awful, horrific stories came from an island in Norway where a lone gunman was shooting dead young men and women at a youth camp in that country. And so as information came out in the succeeding hours and days, it turned out this was not, in fact, an Islamist attack, as so many people had thought, but an attack led by a lone wolf extremist of, so far as we can tell, very confused, but also, of course, entirely insane views. This is a very interesting case, though, because I think that the tragedy is ongoing. A number of bodies have not yet been found. A number of people are still missing. But a lot of people have done something, I think, similar to what happened just a few months back with the shooting of Gabrielle Giffords, and immediately used this tragedy as a megaphone for their own political views, their own political gripe. And I think this is something which one should be very wary of, as well as very critical of. People have been leaping on an entirely bizarre sort of manifesto come political philosophical tract by this gunman, and trying to sort of use guilt by association to make sure that anyone who he cites in it is smeared as having somehow egged him on. I mean, he cites a number of well-known American and European commentators. He also cites John Stuart Mill and a number of philosophers. But, what is happening here is, of course, in part, an effort to wage a political war in the wake of this tragedy, and something which I think people should be very, very critical as well as wary of.
Yes. Douglas Murray is our guest. He is with the Henry Jackson Society in Britain, formerly with the Center for Social Cohesion, and a man who has been carefully monitoring for some time what is being done with respect to the Islamist efforts to wage a kind of stealth jihad inside of Britain and other countries of the West. And I guess what I hear you saying, Douglas, is that there's much yet to be learned about this chap, this fellow who professes to be a Knights Templar, a man who is waging sort of a counter jihad and citing in the course of it, among others, the Unabomber, as best I can tell, and certain of our friends in the counter Sharia effort. And I guess what's so troubling to me, and I imagine to you as well, is the prospect that people will say, well, those of us who have been warning about this civilization jihad, particularly of the Muslim Brotherhood, are somehow implicated or responsible even for this murderous behavior. And what do you say to that?
Yes, I mean, it is a very worrying, troubling thing that is going on. As I say, it's a kind of culture war attack, really, in the wake of this dreadful murders. I mean, one of the things that strikes me is that, what is said repeatedly in recent years is that, we should not jump to conclusions whenever an attack happens. We shouldn't jump to explain motivations and so on. But, as I say, much like the Gabrielle Giffords case, the same people who say that in one situation do quite another thing in another. So there are all sorts of people who, if an Islamist bomb goes off somewhere, say say that you shouldn't jump to conclusions. Gabrielle Giffords is killed, and they start to say, well, why did Sarah Palin do it? Is the always shot? And this is what we're seeing here as well. Now, I would have thought that from having done and published a couple of studies on the extreme right in Europe in recent years, I would have thought the following would be a much better way to approach this, which is to say that this particular man, aside from the fact he thought it was a right thing to do to murder in cold blood almost 100 people, apart from the fact he did that, believed that he was a Knights Templar, believed he'd been at meetings of the Knights Templars, had crazy views about a whole range of people, had crazy views about Jews, crazy views about Muslims. I would have thought that somebody who thought these things and had written these things even before they carried out such a disgusting, inhuman act as this man did repeatedly on Friday, would be somebody you would not think of as a rational human being. And yet, the people who say do not jump to conclusions and so on are currently sneering very reasonable and respectable people as having somehow been connected with this man. And I think this is very troubling for one particular reason, if I may single it out, which is that across Europe in recent years, there have been efforts by governments to clamp down on freedom of expression and freedom of speech when, in particular, it is critical of immigration policies or integrationist policies of European governments. We've seen the trial of Geert Wilders, the trial of Lars Hedegaard, and a number of other cases. In not just Europe, of course. Canada had the trial of Mark Steyn, Ezra Levant, and so on. So this has been a growing trend in recent years. And I would predict, and you've already seen a bit of it, that in the wake of this tragedy on Friday, that there will be increasing calls of people saying, no, it isn't the people pointing out the problem. It isn't them, that should be thanked for pointing out a problem. They should be stopped. They
Right.
should be censored for their views. Now, I think this is a really problematic thing, because once you decide that people who are expressing free speech are not the firefighters but the fire, you're in for a problem.
Yes. Douglas Murray, well said and brilliantly put, as usual. Let me thank you for joining us today.